Don't shut off what you have. You've got a lie in your head telling you that the world would be better without you, right? Yeah, that's the consistency. It's a lie in your head that tells you that the most selfless thing you could do is leave. People say suicide is selfish because you take your pain and you give it to the world around you, which happens. But you think you're selfless. I thought I would have been selfless. I was a burden to my family. It's better if I leave. We try to destroy that lie. And I was like, so I looked at him, I'm like, channel your story. I'm like, do you like to paint? Do you like to dance? Are you into music? I love music. If you could play anything, what would you play? Guitar. I'm like, play guitar then. And he shows me, he goes, and he's below the elbow amputee. He was born with just an elbow. I was like, don't give me excuses. Play.
Hey Rob, welcome back.
Good to be here. Colder where I am, but good to be talking to you again.
Thank you. I'm in sunny California, but you can tell I'm in sweaters because
Yep.
it is colder out here for now.
Okay,
And
what's colder to you? How
um
much snow is on your driveway right now?
no snow, no ice, none of that. I don't miss any of that from the East Coast.
No.
California weather 40, 50, 60 is that's cold.
Just so you know, you're the only country that still talks in Fahrenheit in the world.
I know.
You know that, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I
I
don't know what
know.
40, 50, 60 is.
And I don't know how to convert it to the other way either.
There's a great skit of these Canadians trying to convert things, and then they just use the conversion to convert beer. Like how much? So, wow, that would mean getting a 12 pack of beer in the States would be,
That's funny.
it's pretty good.
It's relevant to them, so it makes sense now.
Yeah. They're the smartest of us Canadians for sure.
Rob, I've been looking forward to chatting and really catching up on how the program that you've launched in schools is going for you guys for the organization.
Yeah, well, I don't know how many of your viewers and listeners have heard about what we're doing, but just to recap, we had been doing concerts for the last 12 years for students and in prisons and schools and bringing them together and telling stories, playing music. And yeah, during COVID, we knew there's going to be a time where we weren't going to be able to bring students together. So we had been handed 917 suicide notes on these shows, razor blades from kids that were cutting, just seeing so many people having breakthroughs saying, here, I don't need this anymore. So we followed up with a bunch of those students and we turned it into the school curriculum. Maybe everyone you've talked to already knows this. Maybe you've done an intro, but yeah, what's really incredible about it is, Canada's a massive country. And getting from coast to coast in Canada is very different than it is in America. In America or Europe, you can drive an hour and there's another big city, especially Europe. But in Canada, touring Canada is tough because it's like major cities, but you're driving 10 hours to get to the next show, right? So it was always really difficult to get from coast to coast, especially because our tour was in a school year. We'd leave in September and we'd get back for the school year. We had to work within school limits. What's beautiful about this is this can be accessible to schools across Canada. Now, what's really remarkable is, as kids watch these episodes of my story and they journal about what they've learned from my story, of what my struggles were with mental illness and addiction, what were my breakthroughs, how did I get help, how am I helping other people? Then they watch the episodes of some of the students that we met that had breakthroughs. And then they're asked, what's your breakthrough, or what's your struggle, what's your breakthrough? And their kids are pouring their hearts into these journals, and they can either type them out on our online platform, or they can record with microphone, or make a video. And they're pointing, it goes right to school counselors and to support staff. And the beautiful thing of about 20% are reaching out and saying, I need help with my mental health, I need support. And what's remarkable is that teachers are blown away with how many were flying under the radar.
Mm.
It's like, it's tough. Like for me, it was really difficult to figure out what my role was with my project, my charity, because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a social worker, I'm not a counselor. But mine is to broker the deal. So it's like to be the go-between. You know, I don't like sharing the most vulnerable parts of my life to strangers every day, thousands of people in a room. But if I'm willing to do that and be vulnerable, somebody else goes, oh, he's been through something tough. So have I, and he's talking about it. So maybe so should I, and he's getting help. Maybe so should I. You know, he's worthwhile. I'm glad he's still here. Maybe I should still be here too. So so many run under the radar because until you hear somebody else openly talk about it, you don't go. So you can have all the resources in the world and all the support, but if you don't raise your hand, and unfortunately, Canada, it's not being talked a lot about here, but in March they were going to be. Thank goodness it's going to be pushed back a little bit, but I was really getting a little nervous because they're talking about potential assisted dying for people with mental health issues. So it's already exists if you have another disability or sickness or something like that, but and they want to include mature minors. Like the wording is very slippery. So I was getting really nervous about that because the last thing that people Google before they take their life is what's the most painless way to die. Mm. You know, I never thought I'd tell this story, but we had a group outing and we were having a dinner as a team, and then we left. And as I'm driving across the bridge, I could see there was a bit of a commotion, and there was a girl who had climbed over the edge, and she was hanging by this pole. And so I went over the bridge, and I slowly started walking back, and she's yelling at everybody because people are there. Some are trying to talk to her, but some are just there to videotape, right? And she's like, "This isn't a show." And I'm like, "Hey," I'm like, if I get everybody to leave, you know, can you and I have a chat, you know? And so I had no confidence. Like I don't literally talk people off the ledge, right? But you know, we were having this conversation, and she was heavily intoxicated, so she was already slipping. And she's looking down, and all the normal stuff that I would talk about is you have value, you got to keep going. Like, do you know who I am? You know what these names on my arms mean? And I'm trying to talk. Nothing was doing it until she said, "Is this a painful death? Will this be quick?" And that's all I had to work with. I said, "Oh, you don't want to go this way. The initial fall probably isn't going to kill you from this height. It's going to be, you're going to hurt bad when you land. It's going to be slow. It's going to be drowning. You're not, you know." And that's what made her, you know, until the police came, and police came as I talked to her, distraction, until we were able to grab her and pull her over. But man, if we get to this place, like we have to be able, like our government is talking about potentially saying you can make an appointment. Like I just watched in Mississauga, Ontario, this woman who has a soup kitchen, like a homeless place, right? And she said people are coming in, "Hey, I lost my job. Grocery prices are crazy right now." It's like, when is this thing? How do I sign up for this assisted death? And she was, "I can't afford food. I can't afford," you know. That's what we should be getting them the help that they need, you know, the supplies that they need, the therapy that they need. And instead, talking about this now, again, that was going to be March 17th, and there's, I guess, enough people that are upset about it that it's being pushed back. So, but it's those things that you talk through, you know, and things that you learn as you read these journals. People are just like, they just show me some hope, you know. We're working on another potential thing is we teach students, you know, how to have breakthroughs, and we try to broker the deal with students and staff. We're also working on something for parents. Like, how do we approach some of these things there? And I was talking with one mom, her daughter's name is on my arm, and she talks with parents, like, you know, how do you help? And she said something really unique. She says, you know, if you've got a son, daughter, niece, nephew, grandchild that's struggling with mental health, it's like, I always describe when I talk to parents, it's like they're in a trench. And she goes, for us, the Robb Nash project came to her school, and they put a ladder down into that trench. And she stood up on it for the first time. She goes, and as parents, we wanted to like help her up the stairs, right? One step at a time. She goes, and quickly she realized they just have to hold the ladder. They're the support. but it's the person that has to make those choices. So we're working together with some parents that have been able to help with that, to develop some tools for parents as well, who are just, how do we approach these things? You know, what language, what do you say? And yeah, it's you know, people always say, hey, my kid's struggling, what do I say to make this go away? How do I make it better? I'm like, those words don't exist. You know, otherwise I'd give them to you. You know, there's no magic statement that makes it go away. Sorry, I have long answers to your questions.
That's
Hey.
no, that's great, actually, Robin. You hit two things that really grabbed my attention is that you honestly don't love sharing your personal stuff that you've struggled through on stage, but you do it because you care. You do
Yeah.
it because you know that it's going to reach someone. And I know there's a lot of individuals out in the world that care, but are too afraid to step up and do something. So honestly, I applaud you. And what would you say to the people that care about any kind of challenges that we have in our world for them to step up? What keeps you going?
Yeah, well, I think um, you know, there's a few directions I could go with this, but you know, Simon Sinek has some great talks about this, but it's like you can ask anybody, what do you do? And everybody can tell you what they do, any adult. Ask them, why do you do it? And very few people have a good answer for that, right? And, you know, to have a why, a purpose, you know, like, you know, for me, for those who don't remember the last time we chatted, you know, I had top 10 hits on the radio and it was fun. It was good. Like, we had songs on the radio, we're playing to big crowds, and it was success, right? That's what everybody's chasing for, you know, the pursuit of happiness, you know, and chasing success. But there's another great book, it's called From Success to Significance, you know, and it talks about taking that next step to doing something that's fulfilling. People think that walking away from a record deal and, you know, starting what I'm doing with my charity, which has been difficult, you know, not just difficult sharing and being vulnerable, but also difficult, you know, as I just left my record deal, didn't have a dollar to my name, had to refinance my home, and just left on a tour, didn't have a charitable status, couldn't take a donation in the first years, and just left. And everyone thought, what a sacrifice. But it didn't feel like a sacrifice. This has been the most fulfilling thing ever. And I'm not telling everybody you have to leave your job and go start something, but spend an hour a week. Find something that stirs you. There's something stirs everyone. You know, you see it all the time. Somebody, maybe you've seen somebody, you know, struggle with, you know, breast cancer. You know, maybe there's a soup kitchen. Maybe there, you know, you've had somebody struggle with mental illness. Maybe there's something. There's a problem having a beard. I swear I have like a hair in my mouth somewhere.
They're annoying.
Oh, you have that problem too?
Not with the beard.
But it's like find something in an hour that just like, or an organization or a soup kitchen that you can volunteer at for, and let your kids see that. Let your family see that it's just, you know, it's like, wow, my dad does that. That's interesting. It's not just a 9 to 5, but wow, we do that on the weekend, or and that, like, all of a sudden you're doing something as a family. Like, find something that stirs you, you know, find a charity that you believe in, go do something, you know, like, don't just, like, we have such a self-absorbed world, you know, it's like, look after yourself. And for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditch. Some people spend all their time, most people, especially in the West, we look after ourselves. You don't spend any time doing anything for anybody else. Other people get into the other ditch, and I can get there sometimes where I spend all the time taking care of other people's needs and I don't look after myself, you know, but you got to balance that time in your life and have some why, have some purpose, you know. And that's what's going to be fulfilling. That's what's going to give you the stirring, you know, like yeah, this one guy picked me up from the airport one day when I landed. Friend of mine, he picks me up and he goes, "Hey Rob, so how was your flight?" I'm like, "Oh, it was amazing." This guy next to me, you know, he knew who I was. You know, we started talking. His kid struggles with mental health, you know, and so we had this great chat. And then my friend goes, "Oh, man, you're so lucky." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Well, you always get to have these conversations because, you know, because of what you do and stuff like that, you know." And for me, it's like, if I get on a flight, it's like, "Hey, what do you do?" It's like, "I'm an accountant." And the conversation's over. I'm like, oh, I'm like, yeah, that's because nobody cares about what you do. And he was like, harsh. I'm like, but nobody cares about what I do either. I hit metal strings with a plastic stick. That's what I do. They care about why I'm doing it. I'm like, dude, you're awesome. Like, next time somebody asks you, what do you do? Like, I know him. He's a great guy, and he does a lot of support for charities, and particularly for this homeless shelter, right? I was like, next time somebody says, hey, what do you do? Well, I'm super passionate. You know that there's this many homeless people in the city that I live in, and I'm really passionate about that. So I do this, and at the soup kitchen, we feed this many people. We provide this, blah, blah, blah. And so I volunteer there, and I'm really good with numbers. So I'm an accountant, and I raise money through the work that I do to help support this. Suddenly you're not talking about what you do. You're talking about why you do it, you know? Same with me. It's like, what do you do? I play guitar. Pretty much. It may be a little cooler than some jobs, but it's not the case, you know? And kids need to see that as they're looking for something, you know?
Thank you for that beautiful, beautiful answer. It's got so many nuggets in there. I hope that people really, really hear what you just said in going to significance, going to something that matters. And I'm going to say, I'm with you wholeheartedly. We have got it so backward in the West about what matters and what's important that I've been working at this for a while. How do we get people to genuinely care and step up and look beyond the facades of life?
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a great friend of mine who attempted suicide. And this person said to me, had I gotten one phone call, had I gotten one text, had I gotten anything from anybody, I probably wouldn't have attempted to go through it. So
Hmm.
I'm amazed how much our caring can make a difference if we would step up and do something.
Yeah.
Uh,
I sorry.
no, go ahead.
I read one story where actually in California, it's this guy. I'm gonna mess it up a little bit, I'm sure, but you'll get the gist of the story. But his job was when there was a death at the Golden Gate Bridge. You know,
Mm,
his job was to find the ID of the person and go to their home and just
mm,
check in to find out was this a suicide or was there some foul play and stuff. And he talks about becoming completely callous to it. And he says he got to this person's home. And it's like, okay, he walked in. Oh yeah, there's the note on the kitchen table. And so he said, picked it up and he goes, and just nothing shocked him anymore. And then he read this note and it changed everything. And it said, I'm walking to the Golden Gate Bridge to kill myself. If anyone says hello to me before I get there, I'll come home and I'll rip up this note.
that gives me chills.
Yeah.
That really gives me chills. So
And sorry, go ahead.
you up on stage, you're singing, but you're really reaching to the heart of the individuals that are there. You're
Hmm.
showing them that you care. And I think that is what makes your music great,
Hmm.
in that you already have in mind what it's gonna do for that individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? It's what's really interesting is, you know, we were a newer, younger band and stuff, but once in a while we'd get put on like these classic rock festivals where they'd have like classic rock bands, you know, and we're on the new rock stage, let's say. So sometimes we're like, man, it's so crazy to be here with some of these bands that I listened to growing up. And then you watch them backstage and you think, oh, they're going to be so fulfilled because they're so successful. They've got the houses and the cars and the beautiful women and all this. Like, and then you watch them and you're like, oh, not always, but often so empty because all of that stuff doesn't actually fulfill you. And I know last time I mentioned that, you know, my mom's from Mexico. My dad is from Belize. My dad's family still live in Belize. And, you know, we came to Canada, which was pretty different in temperature from where I could have been raised. But you know, I talked about the fact that, you know, in the West, like when I go to visit my family in Belize, like everybody just shuts down because family's there to visit, right? And just a different, and I mentioned that in the West we're just so focused on more, more, more. And after we hung up that call, I was like, you know, I should clarify something though. Like some people believe that money is the root of all evil, so you shouldn't pursue it. Money is not the root of all evil. It's the love of it. So if you're making money and you're doing well, but there's a purpose to it, you are doing something with that money, go for it. Be prosperous. And I love what one person I heard say, like, if you feel like you're to work in Africa, go to village and you've got sandals on your feet, like you're prospering, like you have what a lot of people don't have, and you're able to do the work you've been called to. But if you're meant to give $1 billion to an organization and help solve a problem, but you only give 1 million, that's not prosperous. It's like having enough money to do what you're calling in your life. And guess what? At the end of the day, I'm not the best singer. I'm not the best songwriter. There are so many people that are way more talented. All the time, I'm like, that song is so much better than anything I could write, and nobody's going to hear it because, the right things have to happen. But all I do is I wake up and I'm like, look, I'm not the best at this, but I'm available. If somebody more talented isn't willing to do the stuff that needs to be done, I'll try, and being available is what the world is lacking. I'm available. I'm going to keep my eyes open when I'm walking around today. This one, I do a few podcasts, so forgive me if I'm repeating any stories, but
it's great.
This one I don't do a lot of one-on-one, but a family friend, their son had a few attempts, and they asked if I'd meet him at the hospital when he got released. So we went, I took him out for lunch, and then he was just like, why do my parents, this is my life. If I want to cut myself, they're my arms. If I want to get high, it's my mind. If I want to kill myself, it's my life. And I was like, he just doesn't want anyone to intercede for him. I'm like, yeah, but I think there's something special about you. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, are you ever sitting at a red light and there's people all around you, crowds, but somebody stands out to you and you're not sure why? Does that ever happen? It's like, maybe she's hot, but maybe sometimes it's not just that. And he goes, yeah, that happens all the time. I'm like, yeah, I think you have a gift. I'm like, let's go for a walk. So we're walking crowded streets. I'm like, point out the first person that stands out to you. We're walking down busy streets. He goes, what? I'm like, did anyone stand out to you? Does anyone stand out? He goes, well, it is funny you say that, because as soon as we got out here, I noticed that woman over there across the street. I'm like, the one with the walker? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, hey, let's go find out why. We start walking across the street, and he's like, what are we doing? I'm like, let's go find out why you noticed her. Did I tell you this?
Go ahead, continue. Because
Okay.
the listener may not have heard your other
Okay.
podcast.
Sure.
Go for it.
But you're nodding. I'm like, oh, she's heard this story.
No, go.
So we get there, and she says, I said, hey, ma'am, is there anything we could do for you? And she sheds a tear, and she goes, I'm standing here. I've been standing here for half an hour. She goes, my shoes are untied, and I'm scared to take another step because I might fall and break my other hip. I just prayed that somebody would come and tie my shoes for me. Would you boys tie my shoes? I tied one. He tied the other. She was so thrilled. We walked away, and this dude was fired up. And he's like, that was awesome. I'm like, yeah, man, you saw it. He goes, yeah. And I'm like, let me ask you this. Do you want to cut yourself right now? No. Do you want to get high? No. Like, do you want to kill yourself? He's like, no. I'm like, why? Who are you focused on? He's like, her. Like, yeah. Wake up and be available. Look around you. Who could you say hello to that's walking? This is, you can't always do this, and things are tough right now. But like, if I go fill up gas, like, finances are tight for me. Running this charity, especially through COVID, has been tough. But when I go fill up gas, especially in winter in Canada, all those guys outside pumping gas, I'm like, what can I get you to drink? And there's 3 guys working outside. You buy them each a Gatorade or a hot chocolate. They're just like, what? And there's $6, but it's like those little interactions. And then guess what? All of a sudden, hey, we looked up who you are. And all of a sudden you're having deep conversations and stuff like that. But those little gestures, maybe you don't have the big conversation, but somebody's like, somebody bought me a hot chocolate today. Like, I don't know if this happens where you are, but all of a sudden one day you'll hear on the radio that somebody goes at a drive-ins, in Canada, Tim Hortons, everybody gets Tim Hortons coffee. And all of a sudden somebody goes, hey, I'm going to pay for the person behind me. I'm going to pay for, and then it's just this chain reaction. It happens all day. just, and then it's on the radio. Everybody right now is doing this. It's been going on for 3 hours. You're paying for the person behind you. Oh, somebody paid for me, then I'll pay for the person behind me, and it's just all of a sudden the whole just atmosphere of the day changes, right? Because you're available. Just like, is there something small I could do today? You don't have to go move to a third world country. Just be available. Look around you, and it becomes a new addiction.
I love that. I love that. Would you share with our audience your own start and how people from your record label actually stepped up to help you?
Sure.
And the
So
reason
yes,
I'm asking that, actually, Rob,
yeah.
for people to understand that nobody does things alone in this world.
Oh
We
no.
all need each other.
Yeah. Yeah. So um, so we had a few top 10 hits on the radio in Canada. We were doing all right. Things were getting pretty good. And then they were getting ready to bring me down to LA to do a showcase and try to do the same thing in America and overseas. And then I had this opportunity to do a 9-month tour through schools, and I took the opportunity. And you just kind of part ways, and everyone disappears. And then one day I'm in Vancouver doing a show, and I'm like, oh, down the street is the studio where I recorded our big album at. I was like, I should pop in there. So I opened the door, and the producers that did the album happened to be sitting there. And tough to buy an hour of their time, and they're all sitting there. They're just chilling. And they see me and they're going, oh, Robb Nash. Like, they were all pretty pumped about what they were doing with me. And I just left. And they didn't know why I left, right?
Mhm.
So I told them about what I'm doing now. And they're like, and more importantly, why I'm doing it, right? And then I said, I'm actually about to do a show at a theater down the street. You want to come check it out? And then, yeah, let's do it. So we went and did the show, and now you've got all these producers sitting there that they're multi-platinum producers. They've done all the big albums. And they're all in tears going, what is happening? And they're watching the reaction of the students, and all of a sudden they're seeing the fulfillment. And then 3 of the producers are like, we're in. I'm like, in what? Like, we want to be a part of this. Like, what? And they said, we don't care if you don't have a record deal, you can't pay us. We'll record your stuff free of charge. So they've been in my corner, especially 2 of them, Steve Smith and Anthony Anderson. And then so we've been writing music and then recording. And then all of a sudden, and I'm Anthony Anderson, one of the greatest guitar players, right? And he's doing all these things. And I'm trying to get guitar players that can play what he does, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, they become like brothers to me, right? And I'm like, hey, Anthony, I'm like, rather than you trying to teach these guys how to make videos to show guitarists how to play for me, these tough parts, I'm like, would you want to come on the road and play? He goes, oh, I'd love to. And I'm like, I'm going to be on stage with Anthony Anderson. Holy cow. And then Steve Smith, who's the guy that produces all our stuff, I'm like, you know what it takes to make it sound good. I'm like, would you want to come do sound with us on the road? I'm in. And so they're like on our team now. And when I popped into that studio, I was like, hey, guys want to join me? Their friend was there, and he's like, can I come watch this thing at the theater too? I'm like, sure. He comes and goes, I'm in as well. I'm like, cool. Who are you? Brian. Like, who is Brian? And his friend's like, you better Google him. And he was like 3-time Emmy nominated dude doing all this. So he done all the editing to all my videos, including the documentary that's coming out very soon. And yeah, it's just so many people and all the things. Like, I had a record deal, and when you're a kid, you're like, oh, when I get a record deal, I'm gonna get free guitars and free guitar strings and drumsticks and all that stuff and a tour bus. You don't get any of that. It's just they want to make it look like it. They might give you an advance to let you go buy a nice house and cars and stuff like that, but it's just a loan. You owe all that money back, right? But then I walk away, and all of a sudden, there's a guitar company and stuff in Toronto. And so I go to meet with them, and I was like, because whenever I'd meet a kid that wants to become a guitar player, I'd be like, I want to give you a guitar. So I started just buying guitars to give, just starter guitars. So I met with this company in Toronto, and I said, hey, you have these nice guitars. They're decent starter guitars. I'm like, when they get shipped overseas, do you have some of them that are damaged? And he goes, yeah. I said, what do you do with the damaged guitars? I was, well, put them up for rental sometimes or whatever. And I was like, well, could we buy those from you at a discounted rate? He goes, like, and by the way, at the beginning of the meeting, he was like, just until you know, nobody gets free guitar strings, nobody gets free drums, nobody gets anything for free. If we sponsor you, it'll be like 15% off if we do it. And I was like, can we buy these guitars at a discounted rate from you? He's like, for what? Well, we're doing this on the road. And if we meet a kid, then I just want to be able to give it to him. He goes, well, what do you want for yourself? I'm like, oh, nothing. We're fine. And he's like, what kind of guitar strings do you use? Looks at my drummer. What kind of drumsticks do you use? And he just starts, you got drumsticks, guitars. And there's a guy named Bill Nash. He makes beautiful guitars in state of Washington. Happens to be named Bill Nash. And he goes, these are really nice guitars, right? Nash guitars. And he's like, I told him about it. I'm like, I love your guitars. So he goes, yeah. He goes, I'm in. I love what you're doing. So all my guitars, they're Nash guitars. This is like a brand new guitar. That's how he relics them and stuff like that. But there's a couple we had never met before that saw our show. And they said, we love what we do. And they've got a little bit of money. So they said, what they do is if they feel as a husband, wife, they feel they're supposed to donate to a cause. They don't talk about it. They said, do you feel we're supposed to? Yeah. And they think about it, pray about it, let's say. And then if they have the same amount on their hearts, they donate it. But if she thinks $5,000 and he thinks 10,000, they don't give $1. It's only if they get the same amount on their hearts.
Wow.
Yeah, interesting, right? They have to be in sync. And all of a sudden they called us up and they said, yeah, so we talked about it and thought about it for a few days. And then she comes down the stairs. She goes, I don't think we're supposed to buy them a guitar or give them any money. He goes, me neither. She goes, I think we're supposed to buy them a tour bus. He goes, me too. So they flew our crew to Nashville, Tennessee, and went to Hemp Hill. And they bought us a tour bus that Adele had been renting for her last tour.
Nice.
This is the second one that they got us, 15 flat screen TVs inside. And we're like, what? Again, we didn't get that when it was just what we were doing. Now it's about why we were doing it. And we're like, oh, this is awesome. Until we had to fuel it up. That's a big gas tank. And then there's a trucking company in the province where I live. They saw a show and they said, we love what you do. We'll take care of the gas in your bus. Here's one of our cards. And then, you've got Indigenous communities and reserves in America, but we have a lot of them in Canada as well, in northern communities. And we got called to a community. They were a lot of struggles with addiction and mental health issues on reserves. So we went, we had to get to this one. It was a fly-in only. We couldn't get there with our bus. And we're like, and it's not like Air Canada, WestJet, or Delta flies up there or whatever. So we called this airline that little planes fly up, and they said, we've been waiting to see your name. We saw what you do. We wanted to see. And they said, whenever you need it, there'll be flights free. Perimeter Airlines. They said, we got you. And that's what's interesting is we didn't say, oh, we have this opportunity to go to this reserve. And we just said, well, if we get a free plane to bring us there, we'll do it. No, we're like, let's do it. Let's find a way. And we called them. So you have to step out first and do it. And then like, we got you, And when we started going into these Indigenous communities, here comes another crew of white dudes trying to save the day. So there's a lot of tension, especially in Canada, residential schools, what happened with the Indigenous people. And so another white boy coming in and they're like, what's the catch? Why are you doing this? Is this a publicity stunt? Once they saw that it was genuine, it was real, we weren't there to just teach, but we were there to listen. And if you're Indigenous and you get to a certain amount of respect from a chief, they'll give you your spirit name, usually named after an animal, and each animal has a different meaning. If you get called the bear, it means you're the protector, and you'll often become chief when you're older. And they said, "You have been here to protect our young people. So we're not just calling you Bear, we're calling you Bear Chief," which is why I tattooed Bear on my with Chief across my fingers. So in these communities, they don't call me Robb Nash. They're like, "Bear Chief, thank you for coming," you know. But it gets funky when all of a sudden oil companies now want to partner with us to go to some communities where they'd like to drill. You know, we've seen a lot of weird things, you know, because it takes, you got to protect these relationships, and it takes a long time to get a good reputation, and it takes one day to get a bad reputation.
Mhm.
You
I
know?
think that's great that you're getting recognized for the true passion of why you're doing this and how you're impacting. How is it different in the indigenous tribes than being out in normal public areas?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of differences. Now, not all reserves are the same. You know, if there's some that are quality reserves, then like any community, you're going to have struggles, you know. But some of them, like the bureaucracy, like you know, you've been put on some piece of land and this is where you are. And I'll give you one example. Um, I live in a city called Winnipeg, and all our running water comes from a dam that was built on a reserve. And that's where we get all our water. That reserve where the dam is built has to drive to Winnipeg hours to buy water to bring it back. They don't even have access to the water
That's
that they're
mind-boggling.
providing to us. So there's, and when you're that isolated and you go there and you want to tell them to keep going, you get your story, it matters. You know, we do a lot even in our documentary and our curriculum, there's stories of Indigenous kids, you know, and you know, there it just there's such I just adore them. There's such potential in these people, but you know, they're so isolated. And one thing, regardless of how rough the roads are and how isolated they are, and just, you know, there's only, you know, a lot of broken down homes. Every kid's got an iPhone, and that's what's interesting. So they can see that that's what life is like 4 hours away.
Mm.
It's like they're so close, but they're so far away. You know what I mean? And so they see that, and it's like they're right there, but they're not. You know, and it's a really broken system. And you know, we went to one reserve 4 hours from a major city, and I looked, and there was, usually we're the only non-indigenous people there in the room, but I saw two black nuns in the audience. I was like, this I haven't seen before. So I went up. I'm like, "Where are you from?" He said, "Africa." "What are you doing here?" "We live here." "Explain." And they said, "Our church in Africa heard about the issues on the reserves in North America and Canada, and so our church raised money. They moved us here. We live here, and they got us a vehicle. And we drive to the city, and we get groceries, and we help feed the kids at lunch that don't have food." Think of the layers to that story. You know, we send money to Africa, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they were hearing about the issues in our backyard. How many people have looked into our own backyard and see what's going on and looked at the needs of the people around us? You know, it's there was so much to that story that just moved me, you know, and yeah, and then you talk with politicians that have never bothered to drive a few hours to see what's going on, you know.
I think what's beautiful about that story is there are no borders when it comes to humanity and caring for each other. And for them to show up and really be a part of this because they care is incredible. And you yourself, I think you have a way of walking into a lot of areas with genuine respect for the other individual that's across from you. And I think that's one of your superpowers is to be able to do that, whether you're on stage or whether you're in a tribe talking with a whole bunch of people. What would you love to see for ordinary individuals to start doing, Rob, for not themselves, but for others? Is there something that you go, I wish people would do this?
Yeah, well, I think, often what happens with us, even in our curriculum and stuff, I say, look around you. Now, if I said, hey, every school, I want you to go and do this, there's a part of discovering it and researching that I think is beautiful. So to think of a formula, like I've been talking about being available, looking around you, what are the needs? But one thing that I love is, we challenge at the end of a concert, like find a need in your community, do something as an individual, as a family, as a class, as a school. And all of a sudden we got like this one, saw in a newspaper clip, all of a sudden they said after the Robb Nash project did a show at this one city, this one school, they got back. And kudos to whether it was a teacher or a principal, but they said, okay, let's take up the challenge. Let's find a need in our community. So one school, this clip showed that the students got permission to use a school bus every lunch hour for a month. And they started going door to door, knocking on people's doors and saying, do you have any used winter clothing that you don't use anymore that you'd like to donate? And they filled an entire school bus with winter clothing. And then they went and gave it out to all the homeless people in their city. Another school, the class is like, hey, there's a family in our neighborhood that they had a car accident. The daughter's now in a wheelchair. Let's raise some money to get a wheelchair ramp in their access to a wheelchair to their home. So it's like, so you could say like, do this and then do this and do this. It's like, no, go discover something. Find out what happens. Find out what happens when you take the blinders off. What are you going to see? And then it's like, and this is what I always say too, is like, whether it's let's say a 1 week plan that I've got, 1 month, a 1 year, a 5-year plan, I love to look at it and go like, can we pull this off? And if I'm like, yeah, we can do this, start over until it's like, this is the 1 year plan, this is the 5-year plan. Can we pull this off? There's no chance we could do this. Perfect. Something supernatural has to happen for us to do this. I'll give you an example. We went to, I'm so nervous that I'm repeating stories. I don't know why.
It's fine, honestly, Rob, because not every listener watches every show. So we may catch somebody that has never seen you, which is wonderful.
You're just too polite though, because you're
No,
he's telling this story.
no, I'm not actually.
I know.
People get to
I'm not
hear
polite.
it. I am polite. But I think it's great you're sharing these things.
So we went, so a friend of mine, she said her mom works in an alternative school, which
What
is
an
like,
alternative school?
yeah, which is basically, let's say there's a high school and there's some kids that, let's just call them the outcasts. They kind of cause trouble and stuff like that. And they've kind of been labeled that way and they don't really fit the system, and they develop what's called an alternative school. So it's often off location, but they'll have 15, 20 students there with 3, 4 staff, and they can step out, have a smoke break and stuff like that. And now I can make it sound like these are the bad people, but it's like they just need a different environment, and it's brilliant. Like I just love the organicness, and people can just, they just need, just because we all learn a little differently, right? So my friend said, hey, my mom works at this alternative school. Would you go talk to these 20 kids? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I've got nothing up. So I went there, shared my story. And I was like, they were all moved. And I was like, now you know my story. Let me hear yours. Write out your stories, And then also like, you know what? And I'll come back in a couple of weeks and let's write a song together about your story. So they all spent some time in school writing out their stories. And I went home and I was like, okay, this could be cool, writing a song with him. I'm like, and then I'm thinking, okay, how can we do this? And then I was like, oh, wait, I'm thinking some of them might want to write a song with me. Maybe they like poetry, but some are going to be like, I don't want to write stories. But I was like, what if we did something bigger? What if we showed them the entire process of not just writing a song, but recording it and everything? So I was like, so I started doing some work, and I went back 11 days later. I said, all right, guys, they read their stories to me. I said, okay, cool. This is what we're going to do. We're not just going to write a song, but watch this. I'm like, who wants to write the lyrics of the song with me? 4 of them raised their hands because they loved writing poetry. We'll write the words together. Cool. Who wants to learn drums? Some of the guys raised their hands. I'm like, cool. Went to the music store, got a drum set. My drummer was teaching them lessons. Wants to learn guitar, brought them in, picked up guitars, ukuleles, keyboards, and stuff like that. I'm like, cool. I said, we're going to write this song, you know. So now I've got my drummer working with some people on guitar, and now who wants to learn about production, right? So I brought in our producers from Vancouver, right? And they're showing in the studio. We brought them in for the recording process, and they're laying down some of the tracks, right? And then I was like, okay, let's take it further. We've done a couple of these now. And I was like, we're going to make an album, right? Anybody ever wanted to be the model on the front cover of an album? This one girl, she raised her hand. Never worn makeup once in her life. Never worn a dress before. So I've always wanted to be a model. I'm like, cool. Who wants to learn how to do her hair and makeup for the photo shoot? Someone raised their hand. I was like, cool. So we brought them to the hair and makeup college. All the girls got makeovers. 5 of them got to learn hair and makeup college for 5 days. One of them got a $20,000 college scholarship to go there for college because she was awesome. We brought them to the radio broadcasting college, so behind the scenes of radio broadcasting. One of them got a $15,000 scholarship to go there. Once I started laying out and I started contacting people, I'm like, we're doing this. You want to be in? Contacted a photographer that I knew. I'm like, do you want to come do the photography and teach them how to do the photography? It's like, we're in, you know, giddy up. And I was like, now, how many of you like on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, taking a photo and changing the filters and all that stuff? Like, they raised their hand. I'm like, cool. You're going to design the album cover. You're going to take the pictures from the photo shoot and you're going to design the album cover. And so I sat down with the students that wrote out, and they wrote out their stories they're sharing with them. And they all shared this one common theme. All my life, I've always been called a trouble child. I was like, you guys all you keep saying the word trouble child. I'm like, I think we should call the song Trouble Child. Right? And they're like, yeah, let's do that. And I'm like, cool. Trouble Child is a song. Very cool lyric that we came up with was, you never heard me crying. That's why I scream. I act out because nobody sees that I'm hurting. I lash out because you want to call me a trouble child? Watch. I will become what you say I am. But by the end of the song, they're saying, maybe you're like me. You're a trouble child like me. And it's like, I'm going to tell my story to you. So we did this whole thing. They went out and did a project, one of the groups, and raised money for like a ton of money for a family that needed it. And that is the song and album.
That
And
is
we
incredible.
met, isn't it? And then we met with them, and they're like, we own it. I'm like, you guys ready to hear your song? They're like, yeah, let's hear it. And their parents are there and stuff. I'm like, cool. As I looked over my tour manager, I'm like, he's watching the clock. Turns on the radio. All right, this next song's by Robb Nash. He wrote this to students together and he names the school. And they're like, our song's on the radio. But what's beautiful is to the photographer, ones that want to know about photography, he was the hero. They weren't talking to me. To the people doing the makeovers, to the people that were designing the album cover, learning drums, guitar, production in the studio, they're all just going, like, it wasn't just me. I looked at this, what if we did this and we got guitars donated and drums, and what if and I thought, how could I possibly pull this off? I'm like, perfect. 11 days. And I'm calling, I'm like, hey, I call my friend Alon McQuaid. That's a big music store. I'm like, doing this. Can you help me out? I'd love to be part of this. Gives them some purpose. Like, right? Hey, you do photography. Do you want to be a part of this? That would be so fulfilling, right? So if you want to go on YouTube, Robb Nash, ROBB Nash, look up Trouble Child, and you can see the music video, and you'll see the girls getting makeovers. You'll see them in studio with us, singing along the whole process. It's so much fun.
When was this, Rob?
The first one we did, I wish I could tell you, it was a few years ago, and we did another one just before COVID.
That's so amazing, because in that you weren't putting yourself at the center. You were putting these kids at the center to find out what they care about.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so amazing, is that they shined.
Yeah.
And the people that you brought in also shined. It
Yeah.
wasn't about Robb Nash. And that's what again makes you great in what you're doing, is you almost step back and let everyone else shine. But it's your genius of communicating and connecting that allows all these other individuals to shine. And I hope that people get that you can be great and you can be even more significant by allowing others to shine.
Yeah. Totally.
I love
Yeah.
that.
And for me, I've got a few mantras that I've shared with my team and my charity over the years, but one of them is we're not trying to change the world. We're trying to create world changers.
I
You know?
love that mantra of yours. I've actually
Yeah.
posted it on Instagram before
Oh yeah.
because it's so impactful. If
Yeah.
people say it again,
We're not trying to change the world. We're trying to create world changers. There's a there's a kid in the documentary and he's in our curriculum. I met with him on a reserve, way north in Canada. And this kid, suicidal. And I just said to him, I'm like, dude, I'm like, are you glad I'm still here? He goes, of course. I'm like, and somebody's going to say the same thing to you one day. You're going to meet somebody, you'd be like, you're going to recognize, oh, that's me. And you get to change that person's life. And I was like, you got to keep going. I'm like, don't shut off what you have. You've got a lie in your head telling you that the world would be better without you, right? Yeah, that's the consistency. It's a lie in your head that tells you that the most selfless thing you could do is leave. People say suicide is selfish because you take your pain and you give it to the world around you, which happens. But you think you're selfless. I thought I would have been selfless. I was a burden to my family. It's better if I leave. We try to destroy that lie. And I was like, so I looked at him, I'm like, channel your story. I'm like, do you like to paint? Do you like to dance? Are you into music? I love music. If you could play anything, what would you play? Guitar. I'm like, play guitar then. And he shows me, he goes, and he's below the elbow amputee. He was born with just an elbow on him. I was like, don't give me excuses. Play. You plant a seed with a kid. They gotta take the steps up that ladder, right? And in the documentary, in the curriculum, he tells his story. And all of a sudden he writes me 2.5 years later and he goes, hey, thanks for pushing me. I got home, picked up the guitar, started playing. Here's me playing Metallica. He has a callus on the end of his elbow that he uses as a guitar pick. This is going to be low grainy, but deal with it. Okay, people? You can see the elbow as he pulls away. Watch. Look there.
Spectacular.
That would be good in 2.5 years with 10 fingers.
Wow.
And guess what? We have announced that we will be able to finally do our first show coming out of COVID. And that boy will be on stage with me playing guitar.
That's amazing. How many people's lives do you think you have impacted that you are aware of?
I don't know. I like how you worded it, though. I will say that. So we've been handed 917 suicide notes. That doesn't include all the ones that got home and ripped up their notes and burnt them and sent them pictures. The amount that have tattooed our lyrics on their arms. I'll tell you this: if you want to just feel something quite moving, is if you go to YouTube, type in Robb Nash and look up a song called "Thief of Colors." I wrote it about when you have depression, it feels like the world is void of color. So I wrote the song called "The Thief of Colors," and it's just like. But when we perform the song live, the music video that you'll see for Thief of Colors on YouTube is on the LED walls behind us. and it's littered with kids just ripping up their suicide notes, getting rid of their razor blades, tattooing lyrics on their arms, and you just watch and you're just like, and kids sit in class be like, huh, or in class or in a concert, and they watch and they see a kid ripping up their suicide note. And we just want to show them not every story of mental illness ends in a suicide. Not every story of addiction ends in an overdose, which is unfortunately what we hear in the media. And yes, we can learn from tragedy, but balance it. Show some stories of victory, you know? So they need to see Dylan's story. They need to see, so you want to watch that, but getting back to, you said, how many lives you think you've impacted? Thank you for wording it that way, because we can all have an impact on people's lives. What I don't like is when people say, you've saved so many lives. I've not saved anyone's life. I've not changed anyone's life. Conviction doesn't come from me. It comes from within. I like what one girl says in the documentary. She says, Rob helped me save my life. You know, it's like you like with a kid like Dylan, you know, like you plant a seed, tell your story. If you want to play guitar, express it, get it out. Even if it's dark, get it out of here into a song, into a poem, into a painting. Just don't keep it in here. Tears are like poison. You got to flush it out sometimes. Don't keep it inside. And this is coming from a guy that's 6'5", beard covered in tattoos. And I love showing young men that you can be tough and edgy on the outside and still be filled with love, compassion, grace, and inside, you know, and be vulnerable, you know, be available.
I have a question that I've been asking to a lot of people.
Yep.
Rob, what is love?
What is love, baby? Don't hurt. It's a song.
Yes.
Saturday Night Live.
Good song.
What is love? Love is pouring into somebody's life, whether they deserve it or not. How about that?
That's quite powerful.
You know, it's funny. This quote came to me yesterday. Not my own quote, but sometimes you think about, like, that person doesn't deserve my love, right? And we're so good with talking like that, you know, but it's got to pour something on somebody, whether they deserve it or not. And listen to this quote. I'll do it slowly. Justice is getting what you deserve. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. Grace, love, is getting what you don't deserve. Justice is getting what you deserve. Mercy is not getting what you deserve. And grace is getting what you don't deserve.
That's such a huge topic for me. Talking about love, genuine love, unconditional love. I look at it from a perspective that if we could become that, we would eliminate a lot of the greed that goes on in this world, and we would eliminate a lot of the challenges that we created as human beings, from poverty to everything else. That's why I asked you, the question is, how do we get people to care more? What can they do? So touch on that one more time, like from the perspective of genuine love, because you get up on stage and that person that hands you their note can feel that you care about them.
Yeah. People can smell bullshit a mile away. They can smell when it's an ulterior motive. Like, they can see when you're doing it for cameras, you know. I'd love to say that I've figured this all out, but I had somebody in my life yesterday called me out and said, I think you're holding on to some unforgiveness in a situation in my life. I was like, and that's why this quote came out to me, because I was like, I know I'm right in this scenario. And, you know, I'm like, dang, it's true. It's true. I need to forgive here. And holding on to unforgiveness, and I love the saying where it's like, holding on to unforgiveness, not giving somebody grace, forgiveness, whatever, is like drinking poison and hoping it hurts the other person, right? And so I had to let go of something yesterday and forgive, and it just felt so good. And for one thing, you'll see our documentary's not out yet, but it will be soon. But within it, I talk about my own family. My parents had 5 kids, and they were all growing up, getting older, and then oops, here comes Robbie. So I was the only kid in kindergarten that was an uncle. So my siblings were a fair amount older, and they had like a family band, but they sang like as a family and quite religious, legalistic home, and I just grew up in a different era. I moved away when I was 15 to a school, and I just became obsessed with music. And when I started doing what I do, it was rock music and it was tattoos. And man, everybody wants the support of your family and friends, but a lot of my family and friends didn't not only didn't have my back, but I got messages like tattoos are the only sin God can erase. I got all kinds of things said to me. And my brother is in the documentary, and it's bold of him, but he said, yeah, I crucified Robb. Like I said, what you're doing is wrong. You can't play that kind of music. You can't do what you're doing. Your motives are all bad. That's not good music. And then he talks about how, all of a sudden you find we all have our struggles, and he had his struggles, and all of a sudden he came to a show and saw. And my dad, who passed away during COVID, man, he was my biggest fan when I was an athlete before my big car accident, and I always wanted him in my corner, loving the music, and just wasn't exactly their style. But before he passed, he got to come see what I do and come to a concert. He had earplugs in, didn't like the music, but he got to see that it maybe didn't like what I was doing, but he saw why I was doing it before he passed, which meant a lot to me, but again, the strength you need, and I've been able to say this to a lot of young people, the strength you need to do what you need to do in your life comes from within. Having the support of your parents and the people around you is a massive bonus. It's something we all desire, but you have a calling on your life. And to that person that grew up without a mom, without a dad, broken home and stuff like that, I've just seen it too much, that there's a strength in you that is going to be there that isn't there for the person that has perfect parents. There's just I've just seen it. There's just miraculous things where somebody, if they're looking for it, like if you get up looking for pain, you're going to find it. But if you get up looking for hope, looking for help, looking for love, you'll find that too. And sometimes that's a daily decision.
Thank you for saying all that, Robb. It's going to make a big difference to a lot of people that struggle with going their own path. I mean, imagine had you not continued on your path, the lives that would still be struggling because you didn't come along. So
Sure.
thank you for saying that. And the struggles are real with every family, and how we process it, and whether we choose love and kindness and all those things, or whether we choose to dwell in the negative part. So thank
Right.
you for sharing all that. Robb, how can people contribute to the Robb Nash project?
Well, yeah, if you go to robbnash.com, and that's Robb with 2 B's. Yeah, you can, for one, there's videos, there's different things you can look up on YouTube. One, you can send it to somebody that maybe you're not sure what to say, and maybe you'll see videos that we've posted and stuff like that. There's music videos, there's all that, but there's different things. If you do go to our website, there's places you can donate, right? Schools don't have a lot of money, if any, to support what we do. And for the curriculum that we're putting in all the schools, that there's a cost to my charity of about $5,000 at school, just for the licensing fees, all the software and all that stuff. And not gonna lie, that's we got enough money till about the end of the month type thing right now. Something always amazing happens, but You know, we don't get any government funding for what we do. Everything we get has been from donors that hear what we say and like, we want to help. You know, we believe in this, and for some people they can give $10, some do 100, but even if you just want to pass it on like a message, take what we've given. You know, again, we're not trying to change the world. You can be a part of a world changer. Maybe you've heard something today, and if you spread that, that's supporting us, because us is just, we're an army of people, you know. And I'll say this though, if you're stirred by this and you want to be a part of it, and there's something you're stirred to do, it doesn't have to be a tour bus, great. But if you're not stirred by this or anything I've talked about today, there's nothing wrong with that. But find something that does stir you, find it, and go be a part of it. There's a lot of organizations, there's a lot of places that need a day of support, you know. So you don't have to be stirred by anything I've said, but something in you, in your family, in your community, you've seen pain. And I'll say this, passion doesn't always come from what you love. Sometimes it comes from what you hate. Mothers Against Drunk Driving was not developed by mothers who love drinking and driving. It was developed by mothers who lost sons, daughters to drinking and driving, and it angered them, and they had to do something about it. So sometimes you're going to get stirred by things you love. Sometimes you're going to get stirred by something that just has caused pain in your life, and you need to do something about it.
Rob, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And I hope for our listeners, you've heard all these wonderful messages. And if this speaks to you, please do something. Whether it's the Robb Nash organization or something else, do something. We all can make a difference. We really are the answers to everything that is going on in our world. Rob, thank you so much again.
You're my favorite.
Thank you.
What is love? Baby, don't hurt me.
Yeah, go ahead and sing that for us.
I gotta do the head bob. Yeah.
Yeah.